Who was Hannah in the Bible? Hannah is a central figure in the Old Testament, known as the mother of the prophet Samuel. Her story is recorded in the opening chapters of 1 Samuel and serves as a true inspiration. Hannah was married to Elkanah, a Levite who lived in Ramah in the tribe of Ephraim. She endured great suffering because she was unable to have children, while Peninnah, Elkanah's other wife, had several and constantly taunted her about it. Despite this pain, Hannah never gave up and remained steadfast in her prayers. She made a vow to God: if he granted her a son, she would dedicate him entirely to his service. God heard her sincere prayers, and Hannah gave birth to Samuel, who would become one of Israel's greatest prophets. More than just Samuel's mother, Hannah is remembered for her unshakable faith and exemplary devotion. Her story shows us the power of perseverance and trust in God, even in the most difficult situations. The name Hannah comes from Hebrew and means full of grace. In the biblical narrative, she stands out for her firm faith and admirable perseverance. Even though she was barren, she fervently cried out to God for a child. And the Lord, in his infinite mercy, answered her prayers by blessing her with Samuel, whose name means asked of God or heard by God. A verse that powerfully summarizes Hannah's story is found in 1 Samuel 1:27-28. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life, he will be given over to the Lord. This passage highlights Hannah's unwavering faith and how she faithfully kept her promise to dedicate Samuel to God's service. Now, let's explore Hannah's story in more detail, beginning with chapter 1 of 1 Samuel. This chapter introduces Hannah's family context and the challenges she faced, such as Peninnah's taunts and the pain of childlessness, but also reveals the strength of her faith in the face of adversity. Whenever Hannah went to the temple of the Lord, Peninnah would take the opportunity to provoke her, leaving her so distraught that she would cry and lose her appetite. Her husband Elkanah tried to comfort her by asking, "Hannah, why are you crying? Why won't you eat? Am I not more important to you than 10 sons?" One day after a meal in Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to the temple. There the priest Eli was sitting near the entrance. In the midst of her deep sorrow, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. She made a vow, saying, "O Lord Almighty, if you will look upon your servant's misery and remember me, if you give me a son, I will dedicate him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever touch his head." As Hannah prayed silently, Eli noticed her lips moving but heard no sound, so he thought she was drunk. He scolded her, "How long will you keep getting drunk? Get rid of your wine." But Hannah replied, "No, my lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine, I was pouring out my soul before the Lord. Don't take me for a wicked woman, I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief." Eli then said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Hannah thanked him, and with a lighter heart she ate, and her sadness vanished. The next morning they worshipped the Lord and returned home. Sometime later the Lord remembered Hannah, and she conceived. After giving birth to a son, she named him Samuel, saying, "Because I asked the Lord for him." Elkanah and his family went annually to the temple to make their offerings, but Hannah decided to stay home until Samuel was weaned. She told her husband, "After he is weaned, I will take him to the temple, and he will live there forever." Elkanah supported her decision, asking only that the Lord confirm his word. So, after weaning the boy, Hannah took him to the temple in Shiloh, along with an offering. There she said to Eli, "My lord, I am the woman who stood here praying to the Lord for this boy, and the Lord granted me my request. Now I give him to the Lord for his entire life." Hannah then praised the Lord in prayer, expressing that her heart rejoiced in the Lord and extolled the strength he gave her. She declared that no one compares to the Lord, who is powerful and just, capable of lifting the needy and reversing any situation. Throughout her life, Hannah demonstrated gratitude and faith, even in the face of adversity, and her story inspires us to trust in God and keep our promises. Hannah's journey reveals the power of unshakable faith, especially when facing challenges that seem impossible to overcome. By trusting in the Lord and persevering in her prayers, Hannah was not only blessed but also left a legacy of faith and devotion that impacted generations. We can learn 5 lessons from the story of Hannah. 1. The power of sincere prayer. One of the deepest lessons from Hannah's life is the power of sincere and fervent prayer. In her anguish and pain, Hannah did not hesitate to pour out her heart before God. She prayed with all sincerity and made a vow to the Lord, showing that her trust was completely placed in him. This trust and surrender to God demonstrate that, no matter our situation, we can approach him honestly, opening our hearts without reservation. And most importantly, God hears and answers our prayers as he did with Hannah by giving her the long-desired son, Samuel. Her story reminds us that prayer is a powerful tool to change situations that seem impossible. 2. Perseverance in the face of adversity. Hannah teaches us to never give up, even when the pain seems unbearable. 4 years she was provoked by Peninnah, a woman who constantly humiliated her for not being able to have children. Yet Hannah never gave up. Her perseverance in continually seeking God year after year, amidst suffering, is an example for all of us. Even when life places us in difficult situations, we must continue to trust and wait on the Lord because he can change any situation. Hannah's persistence shows us that even when everything seems lost, God can turn the tide and give us victory. 3. Fulfilling promises made to God. When Hannah asked God for a son, she made a serious vow. She would dedicate her son to the Lord's service for his entire life. When Samuel was born, Hannah didn't forget that promise. After weaning him, she took him to the temple and entrusted him to the priest Eli so that he would serve the Lord. This teaches us the importance of fulfilling the promises we make to God. Often, in moments of despair, we make vows and promises, but when the blessing arrives, we may forget what we promised. Hannah was faithful and kept her word, dedicating Samuel to God's service, showing that honoring our commitments to the Lord is essential in our faith journey. 4. God hears and answers the cry of afflicted hearts. Hannah is living proof that God hears the cry of afflicted hearts. 4 years she prayed and waited for the miracle of becoming a mother. Even when the priest Eli initially misunderstood her, thinking she was drunk, Hannah remained steadfast in her faith. Her unshakable trust in God resulted in the birth of Samuel, one of Israel's greatest prophets. This shows us that even when our prayers seem unanswered, God is attentive and, in the right time, responds in surprising ways. He knows the deep desires of every heart and acts according to his perfect will. 5. Gratitude and praise are fundamental. After receiving the answer to her prayer, Hannah didn't just fulfill her promise, but she also expressed her gratitude through a prayer of praise to God. Her prayer, recorded in 1 Samuel 2, is a song of thanksgiving, acknowledging the greatness and goodness of God. She exalted the Lord for turning her situation around and declared that there is no one like him. Hannah's gratitude teaches us that when we receive God's blessings, we should be quick to express our praise and thanks. Often we ask and ask, but when we receive, we forget to thank him. Hannah's story reminds us that, in all moments, we should be grateful and praise him for his faithfulness. These lessons from Hannah's story are powerful for our spiritual lives. Her faith, perseverance, and gratitude are examples we should follow in our walk with God. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. It helps us keep bringing more inspiring stories and lessons from the Bible to you.